one of the most important skills for all entrepreneurs is the ability to raise capital. So when times are good, raising capital is quite easy. But when times are bad, it's very, very hard. In just 2 weeks, I'm heading to New York to raise more capital, specifically to find distressed and broken deals. I want to find somebody else's problem and buy it. And that's how you make the most money when you're investing. It's also the most important to be able to raise capital during the bad times. And when times turn bad, whether it's personally, in a business, or in the economy, that's the time for you to put the pedal down and to go harder. So over the next 24 months, I'm planning on buying over $1 billion of real estate, all distressed in different markets where people have problems. And at 50% loan to value, which is low, I figure I need about $500 million in equity. So that's precisely why I'm going to New York, to find that equity to be able to buy those broken properties, and everybody wins. Whether it's $500 million or $500,000, the concept is exactly the same. So in every market, everywhere, there's distress. At the $500,000 level, it might be one home builder that actually can't finish a home, for example. But in my world of the multifamily, that could be a $50 million apartment project with the exact same problem. So a lot of people try to raise money online, which is illegal in many, many cases. So for those of you who are interested in learning how to raise capital legally, I want to introduce you my good friend and syndication attorney and legal advisor to KenMcElroy.com, Mauricio Rauld. So Mauricio, I know you wrote about this in Chapter 5 of the Legal Strategies book for everyone, but let's get into the little bit more detail, because wouldn't you agree that the number one skill for entrepreneurship, especially now, is to raise capital? Because capital gets people out of problems.
100%. And you give it such a great example. Like, there's such a need in the marketplace right now. There's a lot of problems to solve. And if you have the ability to go raise capital, you can solve a lot of those problems. And as we all know, you get paid to solve problems.
Yep. What people don't understand is when real estate goes sideways, which is what's happening right now because of interest rates and high construction costs or whatever it might be, then those deals often make their way back to even just a bank. Now, a bank is not supposed to own real estate, right? But they do. And so what you're doing is you're going in and helping the bank, because the bank is just a bunch of bankers, a bunch of bankers with toxic real estate, and they have the same problem as anyone else. And you can go fix that with just a little bit of money.
Yeah, when you have the ability to go raise money, you can actually pick up these properties at a major, major discount. And especially if you have the ability to go do that, it's something that not too many people can do. So when you develop that skill, you have an advantage over everybody else.
Yeah. So back in 2008, we bought a big project from Bank of America, as an example. We bought a bunch of stuff from a lot of banks. But the property was sitting at 50% vacant. It needed a lot of work, and the bank owned it. And so they're looking for me to come in and fix it, take it off their balance sheet, fix the project, and make it profitable. And there's a process to that, right?
Yep. And I'm sure the banks are being also accommodated to you as well, because they want it off their balance sheets. They're probably going to give you some a little bit more favorable terms than the retail guy down the street.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, those aren't even financeable. Because if a bank owns something that's broken, sometimes they actually have to finance it again. So they got it back because they financed it the first time, but now they're actually having to finance it again to help the next person. So they're looking for the plan.
Yep.
And what most people don't realize that when you're raising capital like this, whether it's from a bank or even another source, then you're actually solving bigger problems for other people. Most people don't know how to fix real estate problems.
Yeah, what a lot of people also don't realize is that when you do that, when you do raise money from other people, when you're trying to solve these problems, there is a process behind that, and there's a lot of laws and regulations that you have to comply, which is why, that's why I can feed my kids at night.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because here's the thing. It's not like going around a dinner table and asking everybody for 10 grand or 100 grand. Because there's a process for that, and there actually is some legality to it already.
Yeah, even if you were doing that, if you were at dinner one night and you say, I got to go raise $100,000 or $150,000, I've got 10 people here that maybe they can all give me $10,000 or $25,000. What people need to understand is that when you do that, you're actually issuing securities.
Yeah.
Which I know doesn't make a ton of sense, especially in the real estate world. Like, why do I have to worry about securities when I'm buying a piece of property? But anytime you're taking money from passive investors, where you're generating all the return, the gains of the investment is because of you, and the investors are just giving you capital for that, then that is a textbook definition of a security, which means you now have to comply with both federal and state securities laws.
right? And there's a bunch of ways to structure that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the overall concept of a security is, well, once you understand that concept, then I always tell people there's three things you need to think through, right? You either have to register that security or that syndication with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which we don't want to do, trust me, or we have to find an exemption to registration, or as I like to say, it's illegal. Those are your three options. Register, finding...
So I'm going to go with door number two.
And that's what we do. We in our practice, and most people don't, you don't register a syndication. We don't want to be registering. We want to find a legal exemption. And the type of exemption that we select will dictate what we can and cannot do when we're raising money. For example, can we advertise? You mentioned advertising on social media. Can you do that? Well, depends on what exemption you pick. So it's very important to talk to somebody who really knows what they're talking about on the security side, a specialist, so we can pick the right exemption for you.
And what if you're just raising money to start a new business?
Same thing. This is not relative to real estate. It's a business. If you want to buy crypto, if you want to buy trading cards, if you want to buy the New York Jets, if you want to buy a plane, I've heard people syndicate private jets, whatever it is. Anytime you take money where the profits are generated by your efforts, that is a security, and you've got to comply with securities laws.
So here would be the right steps. The first thing you would do is you go to a bank's REO department, a real estate owned department, and you'd see what they have on their books. Then you would go see whether or not it was worthy fixed. That's a big, in other words, you don't want to just buy the debt. You want to make sure that whatever you're stepping into, when you fix it, then the value is significantly more than it's worth. That's number one. Number two, if you don't have the money and you have to raise money, that's when you need to go to this guy.
Right? And by the way, the name of the game here always is just disclose, right? The name of the game is when you're taking money from those past investors, once you've decided what property you can find, that it makes sense once you fix it up, and you've made the decision to go out there and raise the money, you've just got to make sure that you disclose all the risks, all the ways the deal can go south, all the ways your businesses could fail, all the way crypto can, whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to disclose that to your investors so that they go into the investment with their eyes wide open. That's the whole point of this. It's to protect the investors and also to protect you, by the way, to make sure that, hey, if anything does go wrong, hey, I told you about it. You're a big boy. You're a big girl. I explained everything to you, and it's up to you to whether you want to make the investment or not, but we've got to disclose everything.
So I just had a buddy that bought a 70-unit apartment building that was 50% done. So the thing would have been valued at $15-16 million bucks, and he was able to step into the note for about $6.5 million, and then he was going to have to come up with $2 or $3 million bucks to finish it. So he was going to be all in the project, somewhere between $9 or $10 million, and he estimates that the value would be 15 when it was done. It was going to take him about a year to unwind all the problems and to fix the project and rebuild it and then get all the certificates of occupancies and all those kinds of things and then lease it up. And so that was his plan. But inside of that plan is $4, $5, $6 million of profit. So that would be the only time. But what he did, he was able to get the bank to take the remaining construction note, and then he had to come up with the excess cash, which he syndicated. And that's where we go to guys like Mauricio, because if you don't have $3 million of cash, then you go out and raise it. But what you're doing is you're saying, we're going to be all into this project at, let's say, $9 or $10 million. But at the end, in 1 or 1.5 years, it's going to be worth $15 or $16 million. And then hopefully we can do a cash out refinance, pay everyone off, and just have the equity. And then you're in the deal for zero or infinite at that point. That's the only time you would raise capital to find a project that's in distress, because you have so much value in the property when you solve it for somebody like the bank in this scenario.
And all that value that you created and all those problems you're solving, that all gets put into a nice, neat little presentation called a business plan. Sometimes people call it a pitch deck, but that's usually the first thing you do, right? You put together that plan
always,
so you can show it to the investors and show them, hey, if you give me this money, whether it's $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million, here's what I'm going to do with your money. I'm going to buy this at this count. We're going to do this. We're going to buy the note, whatever the plan is. And at the end of this, we're going to make a return. That's all neatly packaged in a little document called a business plan, which is really the way that you articulate what your plan is going to be with them for the money.
And you actually do that before you even go legal, because, you know, what you're trying to do is say, listen, we're going to get the note from the bank for 6.5. We're going to put a little over $3 million into it. We're going to be in the total deal for 10, let's say, but it's going to be worth 15. That's what everybody invests in.
100%.
Is that idea. And then from there, You actually have to fine-tune the business plan and then take it legally the right steps so that you don't get sued later, so that the people who gave you the money, they don't come after you and say that's not the deal.
Yeah, not to get too technical, but the disclosure document is called a PPM, a private place memorandum. Everybody gets so excited about that document. It's like, oh, let me see the PPM, let me see the PPM. Nobody's going to invest in the PPM itself. They're going to invest in this marketing. What do you call it? We call it a business plan, but it's really a marketing document to show investors, just in black and white, what we're going to do. You almost have to oversell the deal so that when they see the PPM and all the ways the deal can go south, they don't get scared away. Because my job, literally, is to let investors know every single way they can lose money in this deal. That's right. What that disclosure document is, which is a scary document.
So if you're going to raise money or OPM or other people's money, you have to go through this process, because everyone has to be disclosed as to the potential risks, because nobody really talks about that. If you're putting that whole deal together, get 6.5, but maybe a little over 3 in, it's going to be worth 15. There's going to be $5 million of equity. That's the short version. That's what everybody gets excited about, but nobody thinks about the problem.
Yeah, and from a legal standpoint, there's just so many different things that you really need somebody who specializes. Just like when you're, in the medical profession, if you've got a heart condition, you go to a cardiologist, or if you've got a knee problem, you go to an orthopedic. When you're trying to raise capital, you want to go to see an attorney that specializes in that kind of work.
That's right. So what we're doing is we're going and finding. I actually looked at one today. We're going and finding properties that are $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 below what it would cost to build them. And we're trying to buy those buildings now because they're in some kind of a distress. So they're in some kind of a construction loan, or maybe they have a stalled lease up, or maybe the project isn't finished, or maybe it's finished and they just want out at this point. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to buy projects. So like the one we looked at today, it was valued at about $400,000 a unit 2 years ago. And then they listed it for $300,000 a unit 3 months ago. And we're coming in around $260,000 a unit. That's just in 2 years. And so we're going to be able to buy that property for significantly below what it would cost for us to build it today. We eliminate all the risks around building something from beginning to the end, including the construction debt, which is super expensive right now. And we can step right into a stabilized project and buy it below replacement costs, anticipating that in 2 years, the lack of construction is going to grow the rents. So we're really banking on rents growing in 2026, 27, and 28 because the lack of supply will hit at that time. So in all those cases, I just come up with the actual business plan of what I think is going to happen in the next 24 to 36 months. And then I turn it over to Mauricio and I say, protect me. Well, the reason I love this book is it's the complete guide to covering your assets, maximizing your wealth, and protecting your family, which, of course, most people don't think about.
They don't. And there's definitely a chapter on OPM, because that's as Robert Kiyosaki likes to say, it's the most important skill to have, is the ability to raise money.
Yes. And that's just as important. So if you want to find out more, just go ahead and read his new book, Legal Strategies for Everyone.